You thought the Viva on the streets were over with the curfew? We're just beginning. This is going to be a meandering Viva on the street, covering a number of topics that are purely Canadian. So the Americans out there, you may want to tune out or you may want to tune in and be shocked and flabbergasted. First of all, doing this for a couple of reasons: to catch up on some Canadian stuff and also to show proof of life of Pudge. She is not only alive, she is doing very well. She's lost a little bit of weight, which makes her easier to carry as I do these things. All right, Viva on the street, what are the updates? Let's start with Bill 96 coming out of Quebec. Bill 96 is the revamping of the 44-year-old law, Bill 101, the language laws in Quebec. It is laws that are supposed to promote the French language in the province of Quebec because we're a French province. And Bill 101 was intended to protect and preserve the French language. It has been in place for over 40 years, and apparently it hasn't achieved its desired objectives, at the very least according to the Premier François Legault, the Coalition Avenir de Québec leader, the CAQ leader. And so what do you do when you've had a law in place for 40 plus years and it hasn't achieved its desired goals? You amend it to make it even stronger so that it achieves its desired goals even less so. Bill 96, it's more of the Bill 101, which is to promote the French language, which effectively means to penalize the English language within the French community of Quebec, insofar as it limits French Canadians, French Quebecers' abilities to study in English at cégeps and higher learning. It promotes signage that is predominantly in the French language. It imposes certain business restrictions on businesses that are doing business, and now under this Bill 96, it's going to extend to even smaller businesses than Bill 101. It's more of the same, which is par for the course when it comes to the government, because when the government's policies don't work, what do? They double down with more of the same policy. I personally think the French language and the French culture should be preserved, deserves to be preserved, and ought to be preserved. The question becomes, how does one preserve it without actually penalizing the very culture and the very people you are trying to help and preserve? I would argue that 44 years of a law that hasn't achieved the desired results, you may want to rethink the law instead of doubling down on more of the same and even harsher. That's going to be even worse on the Quebec economy and even harsher on Quebec citizens. But I digress. What I love is listening to daytime radio, CJAD in particular, Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall in particular, who are shocked and outraged not just at Bill 96, the language law, but at the fact that Premier François Legault is invoking what is known as the notwithstanding clause in the Constitution to pass a law which is recognized to violate certain constitutional rights of citizens. That's what the notwithstanding clause is. It's basically saying the government is going to pass a law that it recognizes violates your constitutional rights, but it's going to do so notwithstanding the fact that it violates your constitutional rights, hence the notwithstanding clause. In French, it's called la clause dérogatoire. We're going to pass this law even though it violates your rights because we're going to specifically provide, as per the Constitution, that it violates your rights. And if you don't like it in 5 years' time, when this law expires, you can vote in a new government or whatever. So daytime radio is now up in arms at the fact that the François Legault government would invoke the notwithstanding clause to pass this Bill 96, which is going to violate, according to some, the rights of Anglo-Quebecers. To which I responded on Twitter to CJAD, Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall. You have spent the last 16 months under COVID relinquishing your most fundamental civil rights and liberties to the government, empowering the police state, and now you're objecting because they've come after your language laws. They've locked you in your house, notwithstanding your constitutional rights. They've shut down your businesses, notwithstanding your constitutional rights. And now, as of October or September, they're going to be imposing a vaccine passport, notwithstanding your constitutional rights, and you only object because they finally come after your language. Okay, that makes you naive or opportunist. It doesn't matter which, because the bottom line is the same. You don't object when they come after some rights and bring down the full force of a police state to impose those new obligations, but you object when they come after your language. Okay, you reap what you sow, you live with what you've tolerated. That's coming out of Quebec. And on the issue of tolerating the police state infringing on your civil rights, oh my goodness. Rebel News has a reporter who was trying to ask questions to Justin Trudeau. And Justin Trudeau didn't like these questions, which pertained to the rash of church burnings that have been plaguing Canada for the last little while. Alberta, Nova Scotia, churches seem to be catching fire at the hands of people who seem to have lost their prohibition or think they have been given the political permission slip to do so. And in all of the apologies of Justin Trudeau, he goes out to the Aboriginal land and poses in what can only be described as the most crass photo opportunity of the unmarked graves of Aboriginal children, with a teddy bear in his nice suit kneeling, and there's a photographer right there to capture the moment. Exploiting that, condemning racism, condemning xenophobia, condemning Islamophobia in Canada, and not one mention of the church burnings that have been plaguing this country. This reporter asked the question. Her name is, I forgot her name. Forgive me, I forgot her name.
He's not interested in
This dog's gonna be the smartest dog on earth.
He'll take the picture. He'll look at me this way. Now take the picture of you.
Oh no, this is a video. This dog.
I thought you were video with the dog.
Oh no, I am. Oh God, he's gonna fall off the table.
Okay, we'll say hi.
You talked about Canada's last wrongs, the past things they haven't done right. When will you speak out about the 20 vandalized churches? They're burning churches and vandalizing them, and you're not calling it a hate crime.
That makes me sick. Drea is an accomplished journalist.
Justin Trudeau goes on an apology tour about everything that he thinks is going bad in Canada and doesn't once mention the rash of church fires. And a reporter asks him a question about this, and she gets not only rudely brushed away, the most progressive prime minister in the history of Canada because it's 2021, she then gets physically removed by his policemen. Now, I've said this a dozen times, and I'll say it a dozen more times until people truly appreciate who we are dealing with Justin Trudeau. This is the prime minister who apologized for groping a reporter in 2000, then committed an ethics violation by taking an all-expenses-paid vacation to Aga Khan's private island with his security, doesn't declare because he doesn't think he has to, while Aga Khan is petitioning and lobbying the federal government for tens of millions, $50 million in federal funding. Then this is the prime minister who, because it's the year 2000, I think he said, because it's 2020, hires the first Aboriginal Minister of Justice and Attorney General, Jody Wilson-Raybould, then fires her when she refuses to heed to his corrupt pressure to not prosecute SNC-Lavalin because he doesn't want to prosecute SNC-Lavalin. And when she refuses to heed to his demands, he then demotes her and pushes her out of office. Ethics violation. This is the same prime minister whose mother, brother, and I believe his wife received money from the We Charity scandal. This is the same, no ethics violation there, because apparently, according to the ethics commissioner, there was a sufficient degree of separation of his mom and his brother and his wife, such that it wasn't an ethics violation, even though at the same time the We Charity was granted a sole source, no bid government contract to manage $1 billion in government funding, for which they would have been paid $20 million to do so. This is the same guy. Oh, and there was another thing. Oh, yes, the images heard around the world. And then this individual comes and lectures us on racism, sexism, xenophobia, yada, yada, yada. While at the same time now, his muscle, his police force, physically lifts and removes a young female reporter because she's asking him a question about the churches, which he is not commenting on. Thus, if anybody wants to talk about silent dog whistles, you want to talk about empowering the political permission slip to carrying on when you don't comment on this. Jason Kenney, the Premier of Alberta, the same guy who was criticizing China for their treatment of churches and lauding and praising people who were forming human shields around churches, himself is now imprisoning pastors and in his own province is seeing churches burned to the ground and remains relatively silent. Yeah, This is what we're dealing with right now. These are the politicians we are dealing with right now. It is institutionalized corruption, and it is tolerated corruption from the bottom up on the one hand because people don't know, and those that do know don't care, and those that do care have just grown to accept it because political corruption is par for the course, so they may as well accept political corruption from their own party as opposed to the opposite party is the rationale. What else is going on in Canada? What else is going on in Canada? It's crazy. It's crazy what is going on in Canada. Oh yes, that's right. You have Catherine McKenna, who is Justin Trudeau's Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, putting out a tweet that would cause you to think the earth is literally ending. Because apparently in the heat wave that has recently affected British Columbia, over 1 billion animals have died. 1 billion animals have died. And there's a link to the article stating how 1 billion animals have died. And you know what they include? Not only in the animals itself, but in the number of animals, mussels. They included shoreline mussels on the coast of British Columbia in the 1 billion animals that have died in the heat wave in British Columbia. I had a number of response tweets to this. One of them was, first of all, for anybody who doesn't know, Catherine McKenna in 1995 literally ate dog after having bought herself a ticket into an illegal cockfight in Indonesia and had the video posted on social media as part of a documentary. Proud to have eaten dog after having bribed her way into an illegal cockfight in Indonesia, and is now lecturing us on the death of mussels as a result of what might be a seasonal heat wave that killed 1 billion animals, including mussels. I also responded, it's a shame you're not including phytoplankton because you might have gotten this death toll to the trillions. This is alarmist, opportunist nonsense. That is the hypocrisy that we have grown accustomed to with this government. Hypocrisy in terms of messaging, hypocrisy in terms of action. The Minister of Infrastructure and Communities lecturing us on the 1 billion animals that died, which include mussels on the shoreline, who herself has eaten dog at an illegal cockfight. Coming from the Prime Minister, who is lecturing us on sexism and xenophobia, who has done everything we know that he has done as relates to groping reporters, firing women reporters, firing minority women who do not heed to his demands, and having dressed the way he is dressed on more than one occasion, lecturing us. It's what we've grown accustomed to with this corrupt, inept government, and it is just time for it to end once and for all. It is time. Elections are coming. It is time to get this government out of office because they do not deserve the positions of authority that they hold. All right, that is a Viva rant on the street. Pudge, what do you say? You know what? As much weight as you've lost, you're so very heavy. My arm's going down. Peace out. Please say peace out. Peace.